Well, welcome everyone to our Millennials in Travel March virtual event. We're so excited to have all you guys here. We've got a lot of familiar faces and some new faces, so that's always great to connect with everyone across the whole country. We're really excited for this virtual event, Life Inside the Pod, with the Tin Lounge experience. So we've got the co-hosts of the Tin Lounge travel podcast here tonight that we're going to introduce you here shortly. But first, we of course want to just quickly introduce us as the Chicago chapter board members, your hosts tonight. So I'm Carson Muir, I'm the Director of Communications for our board, and we'll kind of act as the MC throughout tonight. We also have Abby with us, who is our Director of Membership, and she's a luxury travel advisor with Q Cruise and Travel. Allison Ramirez, our Director of Development and Luxury Travel Advisor at Pro Travel International. And we also have Aisha Jordan, who's our Director of Events and a Project Manager with United Airlines. So we'll kind of pass the baton of hosting tonight and get to ask some great questions to our special guests. First, let's just give you a couple updates from our national team, just that apply to everyone. So for anyone that's new and hasn't yet signed up officially with Millennials in Travel, please visit our website, millennialsintravel.com. Once you're signed up, you'll receive all of our newsletters. You'll get updates on great events like this and hopefully some in-person events at some point later this year. And then something that's been brought back for 2021 that we're really excited about are FAMs. So all of that information will get communicated to you once you're all signed up. And we recommend you register with your personal email address just to ensure you keep up to date with everything. So on the topic of FAMs, we are currently are accepting applications for the upcoming FAM in April. It's going to be hosted by our partners with Virgin Hotel in Nashville. So super excited for this one. It's April 20th to 22nd, I believe. Can someone confirm that? And so if you're interested, visit the website and get an application in. We would love to have as many applications as possible. We're anticipating having about one FAM per month. So again, great to be on top of our updates and making sure that anything that catches your eye that you're interested in getting involved with, please keep an eye out for when those applications open up. Finally, I'll just plug an upcoming virtual conference. RepFest is going to be coming back in 2021 after a super successful 2020 conference. And that is going to be April 20th to 22nd. And we're going to even have one of the breakout sessions be a panel hosted by our own Millennials in Travel. So hopefully you guys have those dates available and can join us for that upcoming event. So that's all the updates from National. Just a couple housekeeping notes for this event. We're going to keep people on mute during the interview just to make sure that we get through the questions that we have planned. And then I would recommend if you want to set your Zoom preferences up to speaker view, that should probably be the best viewing experience for the next 45 minutes. And please enter questions in the chat. We're hoping to do some Q&A towards the end of the event tonight. And then we're also going to try and weave in some polls. So we want to get your guys' feedback on a few topics, and we'll try and weave those in. So just fill those out and hit submit, and we'll share some of the results with you as we go through the interview. So that's all the housekeeping. Now let's go ahead and introduce our special guest. So it's my distinct pleasure to have the co-host of the Tin Lounge here. TIN is an acronym for Travel Industry News, and it is the focus of their podcast. Karine and Theresa analyze the week's travel industry news stories before compiling them into a podcast episode with the most important highlights from that past week. So this has proven to be a huge time saver and a useful tool for so many travel professionals trying to maneuver these past 12 months. So while the content is of course important, it is their on-air chemistry that keeps listeners coming back week after week. And so I'm so excited first to introduce Karine Johnson, one of the co-hosts. Welcome, Korrine.
Thank you for having me.
And Korrine is a travel agent and owner of Journeys Travel Company. So Korrine, go ahead and we're going to jump into the details on your podcast, but give us a little bit of a background on what you're doing when you're not podcasting.
Selling a lot of travel these days, thankfully, and I'm very glad a lot of it's for 2022, so it might actually happen. I have been in the travel industry for almost 15 years, and this is our 10th year at Journey Travel Company. So I've got a business partner. We own the company together. And then I also am the creator of Travel Biz Boss, which is a company that focuses on productivity and organization for travel advisors. And that keeps me pretty darn busy because with the pandemic, a lot of people have really wanted to get all their systems in place and sort of like go from a clean slate. So I have been kept pretty busy throughout the pandemic, and now I'm trying to juggle it all, but I'm loving it.
Awesome. So happy to hear people are keeping you busy, booking travel. I think that is a good sign for all of us. And the other co-host, Theresa Chu-Bermudez, is here with us. And Theresa is a travel designer and owner of Get Out Custom Travels. And welcome, Theresa. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Every Wednesday is like a therapy session for me because that's when Korrine and I record. So we have like right before we start recording, we just like hash out everything that we're mad about because we don't want that energy to like go into our podcast recording. So we just chat, ask how we're doing. And I don't know if y'all know, but Korrine lives in Mexico and I live in Tampa, Florida. So this is like our chance to just see what's going on. You know, we talk everything that's like politics and everything that we're not supposed to talk on the podcast episode. So get all that negative energy out before we dive into the weekly news.
Love it. And when you're not recording the podcast, what keeps you busy as a travel advisor and owner of Get Out Custom Travel?
Similar to Korrine, but not to her level. I'm maybe like 4.5, not yet 5 years into the industry, but you know, working on new inquiries, which I'm very grateful for, similar to Korrine, 2022 and 2023. And I'm also the creator of Fan with Intention, which is an advisor-facing like educational course on teaching advisors how to better market their FAM experiences to their clients.
Love it. I'm gonna post your Fan with Intention website in the chat so everyone can check it out when they have free time. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hand off the mic to Abby, who's gonna take over. And I'm also gonna launch the first poll. So everyone just go ahead and fill out the poll and submit it, and we'll take a look at the results as we get through a couple questions. Abby?
Perfect. So we're gonna jump into some questions for Korrine and Theresa. To start with, how did you come to the decision to launch the podcast, and what were your goals in launching it?
So I started to have an idea about a podcast. We were getting bombarded with all these news things. I told myself, no, you don't have time for any of that nonsense. Don't even think about it. But it kept eating at me. So finally I was like, all right, well then, if you did it, who would you do it with? And immediately I was like, Theresa is the only one. This is the only person I could do this with. So I nervously was like, hey, can you get on the phone for a second? And I pitched it to her. And I didn't even get the whole idea out of my mouth. She's like, yes, I've been dying to do a podcast.
I was super nervous when you sent me the message because you were like, do you have time to chat for a minute with like no context? And so it could go any which way when someone says that. I don't know if y'all have ever gone to Cruise World, but I went November of 2019, I think. And I was kind of working with some folks, giving them ideas on podcast topics, as they had came up to me to ask me, you know, as an advisor, what is it that I would want to listen to or hear about? And when I was giving them ideas, I'm like, man, I should really do a podcast. I think it would be so much fun. But in 2019, all of us were busy. All of us were just like, there's no time to add another project. And then COVID happened and Korrine reached out. It was the end of April.
Yeah.
And I think when I read the message, I was actually doing a paint by numbers thing that I ordered on Amazon while listening to like a random true crime podcast. I have not finished that paint by numbers thing, by the way, but
I distracted you. But the thing is that we both felt like we were getting bombarded more than ever. I mean, we always have gotten like 1,000 emails, newsletters with all the headlines broken down, but with the pandemic, it was like news flying at you 1,000 different ways.
Every day. Yeah.
And we're like so tired of reading and being on Zooms, like screen. And both of us really enjoy using podcasts, like just having one AirPod in and doing your chores or while you're driving. It's just a way to ingest information without having to stare at a screen. And we just figured, since we enjoy learning in that way and becoming informed in that way, that there's probably other TAs that would enjoy having that option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So after that initial call, what were the steps, and when did you actually have the first pilot podcast launched?
So Karine contacted me end of April, and our pilot episode was the end of May. So we did everything in a month, and we went into this knowing that we wanted to make it something really professionally done. And we didn't just want it to be a hobby. Like, we wanted it to be something really, really good. So from our logo, we got it professionally made from a graphic designer, to the platforms that we use to record and to edit. I mean, I do the editing, but it took a while for me to figure out, how to work the little program. But we even did a photo shoot, like an actual branding photo shoot, because we wanted people to take us seriously from the beginning. We did it all in a month. And that's, that just shows you how well Korrine and I work together, because we're on the same wavelength in terms of how serious we wanted to take it and the work ethic that we both had in terms of making this happen.
We're both Virgos, so we're very serious.
And type 3s for Enneagrams.
Oh, yes.
You guys do Enneagrams.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Did you have a podcast inspiration going into this, or do you have one now that you look to?
We did have one in common. It has nothing to do with travel or news, but we really like the vibe of two badass ladies casually telling stories, and it's My Favorite Murder. I don't know if they're pretty popular, but we just like that whole idea. Like, as much as we wanted to be professional, we also want the podcast to be very conversational and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
We barely edit. She barely edits. I don't edit anything. So we want to be taken seriously. We're talking about serious things. At the same time, we want to be relatable, right? Because we're talking about the news through the lens of a travel advisor. We want to make sure people can see themselves in us and realize they're not alone, and that we understand where they're coming from and how this news might affect them. But that podcast, we're both obsessed with.
Yeah. And they're able to take really serious issues and topics like serial killers and make it something where they can have a conversation about, make an impact of some sort, without being 100% negative, all the time. Like, something good always comes out of their conversations. So we really wanted to have that kind of dynamic without all the cursing that happens on that show. Although at one point I'm like, I really feel like we have to, though, because it's just like so natural right now with COVID, but we didn't. We just wanted to make it family friendly. So anyone
we do it right before we record. We get all of the F-bombs out.
That's Theresa's good editing in there. You just never hear any of it.
Yeah.
And then last question from me, but as you're, especially now, getting more and more travel advising work, how do you balance, and through the last year, how do you balance travel advising with doing the podcast?
I think this is something that we really look forward to doing. It doesn't feel like it's a burden or something that's really hard to do. So for us, I feel, at least for me, I feel like it's something that I look forward to amid all the work that is, coming up. And so to me, it's like, it's something that I want to do. So you carve out time for things that you really want to do.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think I can speak for both of us when I say we both have a strong interest in serving our community. Mm-hmm. We really are proud to be a part of this travel advisor community, and we want to be a part of and help in any way that we can. And this is a way that we can be helpful. And so it's fun for us. Of course, we get our therapy session before we record, then we do our helpful bit, and the whole thing is just a pleasant and positive experience. And it really isn't terribly time consuming. It's totally worth it.
Awesome. I will kick it back to Carson to share the results of our first poll.
Thanks, Abby. So I just shared the results of the first poll. Some kind of interesting feedback. Looks like most people over the past 12 months the most have been traveling domestically, but good portion of you have taken an international trip, and a couple are still waiting until it's a little bit safer and there's a little less risk out there. So that's great. And it looks like kind of across the board as far as what motivates you. So thanks for sharing your results. All these polls are multiple choice and are anonymous, so feel free to click a couple, and I'll relaunch the next poll as I throw it over to Allison to take over some questions.
Thanks, Carson. I love the results of the first poll. I mean, it's just so interesting that, especially seeing like the wide variety that people are interested in vaccination and then the flexibility of policies. I mean, that's awesome. Well, yeah, to kick off the kind of second set of topics, I wanted to ask a few questions. And can you tell us about the different types of episodes, like weekly versus minibar versus excess baggage on Tin Lounge?
Yeah, so we only do one. We started out thinking we're just going to do this once a month, because the full episode really is a lot more time consuming. But then we quickly realized it's just not enough. So let's just do shorter episodes in between the longer episodes. And the shorter ones, we can still hit some news, but also some other different topics. And today we had a special guest who is from your neck of the woods.
Oh, cool.
I'll let Theresa tell you.
I don't know if you guys know her. Her name is Allie Pierce. She has an Instagram. I think her Instagram account is Allie Pierce, and she's with Allie Abroad. And so she's got a really great YouTube channel, a really great Instagram page. And she's not an advisor. She's more of someone in like the influencer space, but like a good influencer who really knows her stuff. Her mom is a travel advisor.
Oh, cool.
And they live in, she said they lived in St. Charles or something, like an hour outside of Chicago. So yeah, we told her we were going to be on this, and she was like so excited. She was like, should I join this Millennials in Travel organization? I'm like,
for sure.
I'll just tell you, they're really organized. Like, for real, they're so organized.
That is so
She is
cool.
also an Emmy award-winning journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows her
thank you.
stuff.
Thank you for that sneak peek. I look forward to learning more about that episode. That's so cool.
It'll be out at 3 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay. I'm definitely gonna listen. Cool. And then, so on that same topic, how do you guys select the guests who come on the pod? Like, what is sort of the selection process? So, you know.
Sometimes they're referrals to us from someone else. So for example, our very first guest ever was Zane Kirby, and he was recommended to us we were connected to him through someone from our host agency. She connected us, and we're like, Zane Kirby is going to be our very first guest. And we had not even been a month into it. So to have someone that was a bit higher profile in the industry, we were initially very nervous, but I think at that point in time, we were still super fresh into COVID. Okay. So everyone wanted to find avenues for exposure and to talk about, you know, what they were doing. And I think at that time we were working on like the PPPs and the EIDLs and stuff like that. So he was talking about their efforts in DC and fighting for the travel industry.
Who's been like the most fun guest so far that you've had on? Or your favorite?
That's hard to say. We have only had a handful of guests, and they've all been great. And I have to tell you, there's not a whole lot of like real serious planning that goes into anything. It just is all organically happening and falling in our lap, and we're just going with the flow. And I think that's part of why this doesn't feel like a chore or a job, is because we're just letting it go where it goes.
Yeah.
Did I successfully redirect you and duck out of that question?
I appreciate the response. All right, I think just my last question will just be, like, what type of feedback have you received from industry colleagues or peers regarding the Tin Lounge? What are people saying? What are the buzz happening around it?
So far, everyone who's reached out to us, they've really appreciated our candor and the fact that we're presenting the news, but in a way that's not so serious. I mean, it is serious business, talking about the news, but to do it in a way where it's not like you're beating them over the head with something that's negative. It's like, here's what's going on, and here's how we feel about it, and what we're doing to address it or to make ourselves feel better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything nasty, which I was prepared for, because haters gonna hate, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're always gonna get, but I have not seen or heard anyone say anything ugly. So it's just been a joy the whole way through.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'll kick you over back to Carson.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. I'm sure they all appreciate the amount of time they save not having to open every single email or read every travel story. So I'm not surprised there hasn't been anything but positive feedback. So I will get to share the poll that we launched just during that segment. Some great responses from this. So this was kind of just trying to get a feel for what everyone's been up to during quarantine, and how they're substituting what time they would normally get to spend traveling. So some really great feedback. Looks like people are busy taking at-home classes, watching documentaries. If anyone wants to mention some of the documentaries they're watching in the chat, that would be great. I'm sure other people would be interested. And a couple mentioned others. If there's any other activities we missed in the poll, throw them in the chat. Might spark some ideas for people to make it through these last couple months before the world opens back up. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and launch our third and final poll, and then I get to hand it over to Aisha for some more questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Carson. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I switched everything around. Okay, great.
Yes, and I'm loving your view.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it really inspires me. My fiance wants to move us to the suburbs, so I've been leaving the windows open so that he can fall back in love with the city.
Love it.
Please don't drag me away. So yes, I have a couple questions for you ladies. Again, thank you for joining us today. Theresa, you both mentioned very positive things that you discovered, from starting the podcast. You mentioned that it was like therapy. And then you also mentioned that it is a form of service to your travel community. What are some other positives that you've gained from starting the podcast, or even just from over the past year in general, even during the pandemic?
I'm definitely more informed than I was before. Definitely keeping on top of things quite a bit more than I was before we got started. And then I would say all of the new relationships that we have developed throughout.
Yeah, the connections. I mean, even pre-COVID, we all of us know in the industry that relationships and connections are so important, and to be able to connect via a podcast channel. I mean, that to me was something that was really amazing, is all we do is we record ourselves and we, share our authentic feelings, and other people who listen, they feel the same way. And I feel like we're connecting with so many people, and a lot of people we don't even know. And I feel like, at least for myself, I've become more confident in terms of new projects that I might get into, because I feel like in 2020, it's more like, I'm going to give that a shot. If it doesn't work, that's fine. I'll start something else, because what else do I have to lose right now? So I feel like the podcast really gave me more confidence in pursuing new things and just trying out different ideas and projects.
I hear that. That's a really good point. I think a lot of people kind of overlook that. I know that some, even in the last poll where you are taking up cooking classes or
Mhm.
doing things that you've never done before. I think it's a really great point to consider that if you can do this, you can do just about anything, you know,
Right.
pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just try it. So I think that's really, really awesome. After the pandemic is over, will you continue to do the podcast, or how will you pivot the pivot, the word of the year, the platform for your show? How will you do once the pandemic is over?
I feel like if I pivot again, it's going to be a full 360. So the pivots have to stop somewhere. But I think I can't remember what kind of news existed in our industry pre-COVID. I feel like I never really read the industry news. There had to be something, but I feel like from here on out, you know, being more cognizant of what is happening in our industry, I still see ourselves continuing this podcast. I mean, NPR, they're around and they've been around forever. There's always news of some sort. And I feel like we're always going to have some kind of content to be able to talk about that relates to our industry and to other advisors.
Yeah, I mean, even prior to the pandemic, just felt like I was reading 1,000 emails a day that were collating all of the, not collating, that's the wrong word. You know what I'm saying? Bringing all the headlines together. And so I don't like, first of all, this is ride or die. We are in a committed relationship. We're not going anywhere, but I don't think we're going to run out of news to talk about. So I don't think a huge pivot would really be required. I hope.
Absolutely. And from your perspective or your point of view, just from being travel experts and in the industry and seeing where it was and what it is now, but looking at what it could be, how do you anticipate leisure travel to rebound for the latter part of the year as well as next year? How do you think that will look?
We just talked about this while recording today with our guest. I am so hopeful that it scares me. But based on the things that I'm working on, the things that are being asked for, people wanting to splurge because they missed their vacation last year, booking nicer, better accommodations than they did before. And also, let's just talk about how everyone realizes they want a travel advisor on their side now. They're not willing to take the risk without someone who has their back. I feel like it is going to absolutely explode.
I think that's a really great point. You mentioned that, and I think there are a couple other industries. I saw an article about, it's totally unrelated, but about fashion and how people are not taking chances. They're going to experts. And like you mentioned, they are splurging because that bucket list is a real life, I need to check this off my list, bucket list now more than ever.
Yeah, and they've had
100%.
2 years. I mean, after 2021, they'll have 2 years of no vacations. And when they finally take their vacation in 22, they're like, listen, I've got all this money that I saved from those 2 years, and now I want to do it big. And people are realizing that there aren't any guarantees in life in terms of when you can travel and when you can't. I mean, pre-COVID, we had incidences that happened where it made people realize that they shouldn't wait. Like, for example, I remember when the Notre Dame burned in Paris, a lot of people were like, oh, I wish I had seen it before it burned down, like before the spires burned. We had those kinds of incidences, or when Cuba, they stopped allowing people into Cuba, people were like, I wish I had gone. So we had those incidences, but not to the extent of COVID where everything shut down. So I think moving forward, people will want to take advantage of every opportunity they have to see something new, to go someplace new. And they want to use an expert and they want to use an advisor to do it because they want that peace of mind.
Definitely YOLO mindset is going on for sure.
Like you said, it's probably going to explode. We can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Well, those are all the questions that I had for you girls. I'm going to pass back over to Carson.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Aisha. And I will just encourage anyone who has their own questions while we have Karine and Theresa with us, go ahead and put them in the chat. I've got the results of our third and final poll I'm sharing with you guys right now. Some very interesting responses. We asked you a little bit about what positives we're going to take away from the COVID era and bring with us into this kind of new, better that we're all heading towards as we come out of this pandemic. So people are, still a fan of the virtual events and conferences. I think this type of event wouldn't have happened without the pandemic and being able to bring this community across, the entire country together. Usually these events are kind of separated by chapters, so it's definitely been a positive for the MIT. And it looks like people would be okay with kind of keeping the controlled capacity at some of the popular sites. The one that comes to mind for me is a lot of, I think, the ski resorts right now are kind of trying to keep numbers under control. And I think that a lot of people are actually really enjoying that, not having to wait in crazy lift lines and really getting to make the most of their time on the mountain. We all know how expensive ski tickets are getting. So I think that's a great one. And I think will kind of help combat some of those over tourism issues that we were starting to run into in 2019. And then, of course, we asked a question about the vaccines. Theresa, Korrine, either of you interested in sharing your perspective on what your thoughts are on requiring vaccines or thinking it's a good idea that people get vaccinated, of course, but whether or not it should be required, or if we think we should just kind of be able to open up?
I think whatever it takes to open things up, like whatever it takes for people to feel comfortable. In general, I feel like people would be more comfortable if there was a vaccine requirement. I know pre-COVID, there were already countries that did have vaccine requirements. So, just personally, I was Googling, I think they call it no waste COVID vaccines, where you can put yourself on a list for a pharmacy or Walmart or something. If they have someone that doesn't show up for their vaccine, they'll call you to be like, hey, we have an extra vaccine. You're on the list, come on in. So I actually Googled that, but I think it's whatever it takes to open back up.
So
I also think that whatever your opinion, it's happening. Just get on board, because this train is on the tracks and it is moving. It's not going to stop. So no matter how much people scream and yell about it, vaccines are going to be required if you want to move about freely.
Definitely. I was lucky enough today. I volunteered at a vaccine clinic and they had a few extra doses at the end of the day. So I did get mine today. So if anyone has extra time on their hands, I would recommend volunteering at a vaccine clinic. No guarantees, but it definitely, each of the days that I've been there, they've been able to give a couple out to volunteers at the end. So just something to keep in mind. A couple questions coming in from the audience. So I'll quickly just ask. So how did you guys get published? How did your podcast get published on Spotify and some of the other podcast networks? Was it an easy process? What did you have to go through? Did you have to pay, or was it a complimentary?
It's super, super easy to start a podcast. You can do it for $0. There are some platforms that cost no money. I think one of the free ones is called Anchor, ANCHOR, and that's just based on your phone. You can just download the app. You can send your guests a request to invite them to record. That's free. There are also some hosting platforms that give you very basic storage, and I can't think of the free. Was Cast free? Korrine?
No, we paid $10 a month for Cast.
There are some. I think Anchor also hosts it for free. I think Anchor was an all-around free one. But to get to the different platforms, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and once you have a hosting platform, you'll have what's called, I think it's called an RXL or something, where it looks like a URL, and you just copy and paste that into certain sections of those platforms, those podcast platforms, for them to upload your podcast onto there. So you don't pay any money to be on those streaming services.
It's shockingly easy. You can just start talking and publish that baby.
Yeah, that's what we did. We just started talking.
I love it. I mean, when you listen to your podcast, it really does sound so professional. You guys have done such a good job with it. Were there any challenges at any point that caught you off guard or set you back a day or two or anything like that?
The first time we had a guest and our platform did not work with iOS. So we had to scramble and figure out a workaround, but we did it. It still didn't hold us up any. You get the little technical issue here or there. Today, a part of ours didn't record, so we just got on before this and re-recorded it really quick, and nothing major.
Love it.
However, if I could give one piece of advice, it was given to us and we have followed it. If someone's going to start one, always do a sound check. Always. Because if you like have a guest and have some killer conversation and then you go and listen and there's an echo, it could be devastating. So just a quick 1 minute sound check. That's all you need.
Just like we did before our event tonight. I've got another question here, just kind of curious, you know, a lot of travel advisors have had to think of new ways, I won't use the word pivot, to try and kind of have a secondary income during this time. And so we were just kind of curious, have you been able to monetize your podcast, or is it something that is an option eventually if you wanted to add advertisements or anything like that?
Our podcast is part of the very first travel industry podcast network called Trav Market Media. And Richard Earls with TRO is the person who actually, you know, put that network together. So I think there are about 8 or 9 different podcasts on there. And there are opportunities for suppliers to sponsor all the podcasts, but obviously a lot of them don't have the funds yet, and they might not even be on board in terms of understanding how powerful a podcast is for exposure. So we are monetizing it right now through our network, but we're hoping to grow that even more in the future. So right now it's just, you know, in the travel industry, I feel like sometimes we're always very, we're slow to catch up to new technology and to new things because our industry is a little bit older, but I'm happy to see that, you know, the younger generation is really getting into the industry and letting people know that there are new ways to market, to advertise, and to spread information.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I'm like picturing in the future, you guys doing some live podcasts at, you know, industry conferences and, you know, taking the keynote speeches and the general sessions and turning them into, you know, the highlight pieces that everyone wants to, you know, learn and take away. So hopefully maybe once we're all back to in-person meetings and conferences, we'll get to hear you guys digesting some of the conferences that happen throughout the year.
That's the goal. I have my outfit picked out already. So.
Ooh, I love it. We're on the same page. I don't have any more questions myself. If there's anyone else kind of in the Zoom meeting that wants to ask a question live, we've got a few more minutes. Be happy to open it up.
Someone was just asking us what we think of Clubhouse. I haven't been able to join yet. Somebody sent me an invitation to my old cell phone number. I have a Mexican cell phone number now, but they have people from all over the world. So I just have to, I didn't want to be rude. So I just have to find someone with an invitation who can send it to my Mexican cell phone number. I'm dying to try it. Have you been on, Theresa?
No, because I actually have an Android, so they don't have that capability yet. Yeah. Androids take better photos. I stand by that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I haven't been on at all. Is anyone on the event been on and want to share their experience?
I think that it is, again, a great way if you want to get out there and build your confidence in the presenting world. You have to be careful, though, because you could stumble into a room where, you know, they may not be very professional or a real expert in the industry. So you just want to be very careful when popping in and out of the rooms. But I think it's an excellent platform to practice. It's not like a podcast. I don't think you have very much control over the audience or over the app, if you will. But I think it's another a cool platform.
Cool, thanks. I only have one final question, or just kind of like asking for sort of a final piece of advice for Theresa and Korrine, which for me, I'm a travel advisor and have been doing it for over 10 years. And there are some days where I just struggle, like, and that's a really big reason why I resonate so much with your podcast. Like sometimes it really gets the workday a lot smoother. You know, I have that little bit light or energy, extra energy to kind of boost when I have to talk to a disgruntled client for some reason, if an airline is taking more than 3 months to refund a canceled flight or something like that. But what would be kind of like your like one piece of advice or insight for travel professionals, especially in like the younger segment, like who maybe are starting out or are thinking maybe I should switch careers, to keep them going in this industry? What would you say?
I would say you need to be a part of an organization like this one. You've got to connect with other people who are going through what you're going through, so that you have someone, like when Theresa and I got into it, I was like, I just wish people would read what I take the time to write out, you know, like connect with other people. I work with a team of 7. But you know, we're all in different places, and even so, I'm always searching for connections outside of my team, because you need the support. We can often work in a silo, and that will, I think, burn you out faster than anything. It's just that feeling of loneliness.
I'll say too, to look at your role, not just in the industry, but how your role in the industry impacts the world. And whenever I get super down, I just think, you know, travel makes the world go round, like literally. We are able to learn about other cultures, like open our minds, the number of people who are employed in the travel industry, like us as advisors and, you know, BDMs and suppliers, we help facilitate that. And to think about how many lives we impact as a whole, as an individual, that is very motivating to me, because it's the kind of thing that I think about when things are very stressful. And everything you do is going to have some kind of stress. And it's what kind of stress you can manage, because your final goal motivates you enough to get past that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys being on our event today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I mean, I'm speaking for Korrine and I both, but I'm sure she's very appreciative as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think those are both really great takeaways from this event, from this conversation. We're, you know, so happy that you guys had accepted our invitation to come on and share your experience, and definitely, you know, learned that it is, you know, not too hard to launch a podcast. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. And just the success that you guys have had has been so great. Let's go ahead and wrap up maybe with a quick rapid fire. What's your, you know, bucket list trip that you're hoping to take in the next few years?
For us?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Is there
like a Venice, Swiss Alps river cruise?
Love it.
Nice.
I would like to go to Denmark, and that was a recent development, because I want to experience their idea of hygge, where I just sit there and be content and not worry about anything. So that's Denmark for me.
Awesome. Well, those are both great ideas. I think everyone's probably got a few at the tip of their tongue. And I know that we're all looking forward to the world opening back up. And if anyone isn't listening to the Tin Lounge, go and find them on any of the podcast host networks and download and listen to their weekly episodes. It's really a great tool. And now that you've met them face to face, you'll get to listen to their voices as they go through and chat about all of the industry news that impacts all of us. That's it for the event tonight, and we thank you all for joining.